everybody. It's Ann Hofferberth with Gulf Breeze Recovery for the Beyond Addiction podcast. And today we're going to talk with Heather, one of my favorite people at Gulf Breeze Recovery, and someone that you may get to speak to when you call Gulf Breeze. Because what's nice about Gulf Breeze is you talk to a real person when you reach out to them. And Heather is one of those real people. So, Heather, would you introduce yourself and what you do?
Okay, sure. My name is Heather. I'm the admissions director at Gulf Breeze Recovery. And I also answer calls, which sometimes surprises people because I answer them and I engage and we have a conversation. And yeah, so I admit people, I bring them in and get them treatment.
That sounds wonderful. Now, you are there not just to talk to people, but you've also had your own experience with addiction. So let's just talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah, you want me to just
Well, yeah. What was the issue? What was happening? And I know that there's lots of ways you thought it was working, but then it started not working.
Yeah, well, in everything I talk about with my experience, I just want to make sure that I preface that with it took about 8 years in recovery for me to get the insight that I have, and I'm still getting it every day. So I'm still getting new insight. Sometimes I remember in early recovery, I would hear people share about their recovery, and I thought, man, they sound so insightful and they know so much about themselves. How did they get all that? It's hard work and pain and messy and all of that. So that's it. I started substances young, 12 years old. I remember the first time I took a drink, and it just went from there on. I liked feeling something different than whatever reality was at the time. So I just hopped substances for a while. And I ended up getting prescribed pain pills when I had my first child. Um, and it went from there. It kind of got out of control. I was young. I didn't know the physical addiction aspect. I had no idea until I was deep into it. So it just kind of, I also think that I had some early trauma, and that it was like a perfect storm. They just kind of mixed together, and it was like, oh wow, this is the solution. This works. You feel okay, you're confident. And so it went on. I have a 27-year history with substance use. And I've tried everything. I mean, I would try to control my use. I would say, all right, today I'm gonna use less, and then the next day I'm gonna use a little less, and then, or today I'm not gonna use at all. And it never worked. I mean, and then I just ended up feeling I was in a cycle of shame and failure, basically. So, um, and I do have a colorful history. I've broken the law to get drugs. So, yeah. But I came through a lot. Like if you looked at me on paper, people would think, wow, how. So I'm proud of that. And I went to treatment twice. Both were 12-step. Basically, all I was really exposed to was 12-step and religion for my, recovery in the beginning, until I met a friend who went here, and she was doing 12-step also, but also doing ours. And I just learned so much from her, and it made me curious. So that's how I ended up here. Yeah.
Now, I am amazed at the fortitude of our bodies and yours, just specifically anybody I talk to. It's just remarkable that our bodies surpass this, and then that you can find your path to being well. The thing that I wonder about, and I think about this sometimes with 12 step, because I haven't been through anybody's program. I've only seen what's on TV. But to have to say, hi, I'm Heather and I'm an addict sounds a little, it's like, I don't say, hi, I'm Ann, I'm heterosexual. I mean, why, tell me about that. Is there some guilt or shame attached to this constant reference to you having been an addict?
I do think so. I don't know if it's intentional. I I I feel that it's almost meant to break a person's will. And what I know about people like me is we are very strong-willed and we can do amazing things. And we can also do really, really horrible things to our bodies and just like, it's like the all or nothing concept of committing to something. And we can go either way. We can commit to dying slowly and really do it well, or we can commit to like achieving everything we pursue. I mean, I really believe that. So it's the will. And that was the hardest thing for me, was to go into a meeting and say, hi, I'm Heather and I'm an addict. And I had a therapist early on who interestingly was working for the court system, which means he wasn't making a lot of money, but he had a true calling. And he left his mark on me and he said, Heather, and I spoke to him, this is years after when I started nursing school and I was having all these doubts about myself. And I called him and he'd say, Heather, he would ask me almost like what a therapist would ask to diagnose like a disorder, because I just believed I was so disordered, I was so messed up, I had to be. And he would ask me these questions and he'd say, do you do that anymore? Well, no. And and how long has it been? I mean, 3 years at least, and he'd ask, well, do you do this again? And finally he said, you're not that person anymore. That wasn't you. It's not who you are. Who you are is always been in there. It was covered up. You didn't know how to access it. And so that I get chills when I think of that, because that was a gift from him. And I held on to it. And he's right. You know, I'm not an addict. You know, I had a period in life where I turned to things that numbed me or medicated me, and then it didn't work anymore and it caused problems. And so I'm me, I'm Heather, and I have an experience, that includes some substance abuse. That's it. Yeah.
Right. And you've written a new story for yourself.
Yeah.
That's an old story. That's a chapter of it. And it's part of what makes you terrific. But there's a new story. So you talked about having, been involved in a transition to Gulf Breeze, which is not a non-12, it's a non-12 step. I used a double, not non. It's a non-12 step approach. It's a different approach. And I love it when you and Barnett and the other folks I speak to talk about the innocence of someone starting with a substance, and that it was an innocent attempt to
Yeah.
manage something they didn't think they had the skill to manage. So talk about coming into Gulf Breeze and what made you do it, and what makes that approach so unique for you.
So it's interesting. Again, my learning is still evolving even now. I think that I was drawn to GBR. I really do. I think I read the book The Alchemist while I was here for the first time. I had always wanted to read it, but I am on this journey, and here's what I know for sure. When I set out to pursue a goal, I achieve it. When I put everything into it, I have always achieved it. Um, and so when I came here, I was at a point where I was just doubting myself so bad. I mean, I did not believe I was capable of joining the workforce. I really didn't. And I had told myself that. So what I've learned is really what GBR teaches us is that what's going on in our head, we build, our body and mind believes it. Whatever you're saying is going on in there, your body and mind is going to believe it. And it became really evident to me, looking back from the point I got here. So I think I was led here. I should have went to work in a hospital. I graduated from nursing school and with my bachelor's, and that was something I had always wanted. I always wanted that. So I said, I'm going to do this, and I did it. And then I'm like, I don't think I'm good enough for this. I think I need to go somewhere and just start, just at an entry level, because I'm not good enough, I'm gonna mess this up. So that's how I ended up here. And, we had a consultant at the time come in for marketing, and, there was a young person in the entryway, and he didn't want to stay. Didn't want to stay. He was gonna walk home. His mom was at her wit's end, and me and this consultant, we had basically an intervention right there in the detox area on this 20-year-old, and he stayed. he stayed. So, and I watched that little kid, evolve. So, um, I think I was led here, and what I've learned is the main message I've learned here is, this person that I'm discovering, it's not new. It's, she's always been there. Um, yeah. Did I answer that right?
You did. I mean, you answered it as usual. You answered it with sincerity and interestingly. But there's something that Gulf Breeze does, and I've spoken with Barnett about it. He talks about getting to the root. So it's like anything with a plant, you pull it out, but if you don't get the roots, the thing comes right back when you're dealing with weeds and things like that. But he is very, and the people that I've spoken with, including yourself, are very dedicated to really finding the source, figuring out what's the underlying reason. Uh, because I haven't had to use drugs or alcohol, and I'm not better, different, unique than you. So, what was that underlying thing, and how does Gulf Breeze do things that are differently so that you can access it?
Okay, that's a great question. Actually, I've been talking to Barnett about that too, because um my understanding has evolved also in the last year. And I found myself at the end of all this saying, if I would have came to GBR, I am firmly convinced that my substance history would not have spanned 27 years, because what it was for me, it was significant trauma and chaos in my childhood that just set me up for, issues like, you know, that we all have when we're faced with stuff like that. But here, what they do, it's a longer program, and you get individual therapy. You get one-on-one time. So if you think about that No Child Left Behind, the crowded classrooms where kids are just not getting the time that they need. Um, that's what's going on in these treatment facilities out there. They're large, 200 beds, and there's not enough therapists there to help everyone. So what happens here is you get your own therapist, and you're here for about 8 weeks, and there's enough one-on-one time to process trauma. I mean, it really does come down to that. We've had a lot of people who come in with really bad, significant trauma, um, and they do EMDR. I mean, you can't just do EMDR while you're abusing substances. It doesn't work. Doesn't doesn't work. So that, inpatient is one of the best ways to do EMDR, because we're taking the substance away. We're in a safe environment that's structured and controlled, and then you've got your therapist that you can process your trauma with, and it's beautiful. I mean, it really is. Um, and some people don't have trauma; they have anxiety and depression, and so what they learn is alternate ways to deal with that. Healthier ways to deal with it.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I've even talked to some of the therapists who talk about having one on one with someone, and they're describing something in their early childhood or in their marriage or something. And the therapist says, wow, that's trauma. And they're like, it is? They have managed it for so long with all these coping mechanisms. They don't even recognize that it wasn't them, that they had something impact them in a way that made a dramatic difference. So it's really compelling. That trauma thing is really, really strong. So obviously, what one of the things you're saying is when you come to Gulf Breeze, there's no place to hide. Somebody's going to take care of you, and someone's going to. So let's talk about, most people come in and do detox. What happens there?
so it's a medical detox. We monitor vital signs. We get a health history. My nursing education helps me with that. When I'm on the phone, I get a really good health history from people. Um, get a list of their meds that they're currently taking, and then we have nurses round the clock. That it's a subacute detox, so it's just below a hospital. So you know, no IVs or anything like that, but there's medications, and vitals, monitoring vitals and symptoms. And basically it's rest. It's a rest with medication to help calm and relax and comfort. Um, and they have their bedroom and they have their TV and they have their meals brought to them. And so I tell them, bring your comfy jammies for detox and we will feed you. And if you want to get up and walk around, you're encouraged to because it's good to move around. But if you want to lay in the bed for a couple days, you can do that too. So,
Yeah,
yep.
it's a safe place to land. It really is. I'm very impressed with that, and because it's got to be scary to walk into any new environment, not especially one where you're kind of offering up your whole self and all the protection you thought you had. So you're there without any of it. Tell me what it's like for someone once they come out of detox. What does their happen during their stay at Gulf Breeze or in a typical week or something?
They do neuro. They start with neuro, excuse me. They have a pretty rigorous neurofeedback schedule, which is well, I'm sure you had podcasts about neuro, but it's they start neuro and they do their groups and they meet with their therapist. So basically, in the beginning, it's neurofeedback in groups. And then also meeting with their therapist and then they build rapport with their therapist, you'll get to know them, and stuff like that. And so the first few weeks, um, are those structured activities. And then, we have 2 outings per week. So they would do that too. It would be about a week out of detox that they're okay to go on the outings. And so Noel does that and he takes people. He's like the outing king. He gets so excited. Um, Takes people on dolphin cruises, to the beach, uh, bowling, I mean, just all kinds of really fun stuff. So, and it's regaining health. That's really the focus is, a total health recovery. So mind, body, and spirit, exercise, healthy eating, and then the mental well-being, which is with the therapists and the neurofeedback. And the groups are very educational, honestly. I think they appeal to the intellect more than anything. I had somebody actually, previous client call me and check in and was telling me about an old place up in northern Alabama, more of a 12-step place that was their groups were led by their clients. So we have therapists leading our groups. And so it is different there. I mean, there's a lot of it's just more, I think, more educational and appeals to the intellect also. Um, so yeah, that's the beginning, the first few weeks. Yeah, that's what I see.
Yeah, and we're talking about Nole and what he does. And so many people think, well, he's just an activity manager. But I've come to realize how much therapy there is in finding out that you can have a good time without anything but a
Yep,
good time. That you
yep.
are for the first time in your life socializing without any crutches, without any other stuff, and having actually a good time for the first time.
He
It's
gets
amazing.
really excited about it too. So he is the best person for this. He's a recreational therapist, actually. From what I understand, I don't think there are any other facilities in this area that have an actual recreational therapist. So, and he just loves it. He's so suited for the job.
Yes,
So,
and he stays in contact with people. He's amazing.
yeah.
So, you talked about how physical health and wellness play. Um, and we talked about all the things that we do there. Now, what I'd like to talk about is what happens when you leave. But wait a minute, before I do that, let's not do leave, because I also know that you make sure the family has some interaction with uh, one of our guests so that they can participate in their growth,
Yeah.
their change. Talk about that a little bit.
So we have, here's how we do it. So I have questions a lot about, do we have visits and everything like that? Getting the family involved in the recovery is extremely important. We have family sessions that are weekly. And then so basically, we have the family sessions that are on Zoom every week for the family to attend while their loved one is in treatment. And our loved one is basically doing all their work in here with us. And then toward the end, family sessions are set up with the therapist. And so that's when people can come in and sit with their family member and the therapist and start talking about, long-term goals and strategies to sustain this. And so usually it depends on what work needs to be done, but there could be 2 to 3 sessions, family sessions in the second month usually.
Yeah, because the family has been duped and lied to and very mistrustful and maneuvered and manipulated. You know, nobody is better at manipulating than someone prior, an addict.
Well, that's what I tell family members actually all the time. I said, think about it. I said, "Well, like me, I spent most of my life trying to hide what I was doing. So I got really good at it. Same as your loved one. That so when they tell me, he's a liar, he's been, every can't believe anything, I said, understandable. And the way you feel about this is totally valid. But that's the point I give. I always remind them that this isn't your loved one. It's what they're doing to keep up this life of theirs. And it requires dishonesty. And unfortunately, that, I remembered when I was doing it, it did not feel good. I felt really dark. But I had to keep doing it to hide everything. So it's a cycle. But yes, I have family members often that get mistaken and think that like a 12-step, approach, their loved one is going to give them this listed accounting of what they've done wrong and apologize. I'm not saying that those things don't happen, that there aren't mended fences. There absolutely are, but it's probably not going to look like a, what do they call, like a come to Jesus meeting where everybody, would profusely apologizing and all of that. And so, but there is accountability. We encourage accountability, of course. So
Right. But I've talked to parents and wives and husbands and even kids, and they'll say that that was a new person they met with. That was a person that they used to know, that they used to love, and they used to trust. And so all that apology is gone now because they see this is the Heather I used to love and know. This is the Heather I trust. So it's amazing. They can hear it.
that reminded me actually of me in early recovery, because I remember the most touching feedback I got was from my mother-in-law. And I had a very bumpy relationship with her. Um, when I was using, everything I did was transactional, everything. Every person I interacted with, all transactional. And I couldn't see it. And I remember I would get my feelings hurt over their reaction to me, but I had no awareness of what I was doing. And so all of that came out in the years when I went into recovery. And she cried when she came to see me actually from Arizona. And she said, Heather, you were so different. I can't, get over it. You are so different. And she was crying and I started crying. And I said, well, and that's when I really did. I said, I am so sorry for the way that I treated you and Jim. And, that was owed. That was a owed apology. But she said, seeing you like this is all I need. It's all I need. Like, I know that's you. And it's beautiful. And nobody tells you that these things are going to happen, but people see it. There's a whole different, I see it in our guests right around 3 or 4 weeks. Their eyes brighten up, their skin brightens up, they're walking around with their head held up higher, exercising. It's just beautiful. So that's the best part of my job is you see miracles. I mean, they happen. So
Yeah, yeah, that's got to be. Now I'm going to take you on a little bit of a left turn here, and you're not, neither of us are doctors or any of that. We're just, we understand this process. But Matthew Perry has been in the news of late, and I know I work with somebody who is terrific and been sober for 12 years, 12, 13 years. But I remember him telling me that his withdrawal from Suboxone, which was medically prescribed, was more rigorous and more difficult than any of the substances that he had used. And while I know that when people are in detox, we make them comfortable, but I think to some people on the outside looking in, there's an what do you mean you're giving someone ketamine as a way to handle addiction. What is your perspective on the medical assisted approach to what versus what you've done?
Well, I've done the medical assisted approach and I would say it was not completely by choice because I was not given the full story, or the truth. It was new. I was on Suboxone and it was when I went to treatment in 2004. And they told me, this medication, is better than methadone. It's a non-addictive, um, alternative to methadone. That's what they told me. And they put me on it while I was in detox, and I ended up on that medication for 9 years. Um, I did not realize that it had physical withdrawal symptoms until I just stopped taking it and I got really sick. So I was, I think, 27 years old when they put me on that. And I was naive. I believed everything I was told, especially by a doctor. But it was new and it was coming out on the market. And I have many consequences from taking Suboxone that long. It actually damages your teeth. They're finding that out. There's a class action lawsuit now, by the way. Um, but I didn't know that either. And so I went through that, and 9 years coming off of it was horrible, horrible. And I'll be honest, I substance hopped to come off of it to a much worse substance. Okay, it got me off the Suboxone, but it was opened a whole nother world of issues. So medication assisted therapy has its place, but I think it is so wrong to keep people on it long term. I'm not going to say that there's not people out there that might need it. They might. I mean, I don't think I'm qualified to make that determination for other people. I just know for me, it prolonged my addiction. It did, because I felt it. You do feel it. There is an effect. It's not. It doesn't get you high, but you know you're taking it. So it didn't. It was a placeholder. I started heroin right after I stopped with Suboxone. So, um, Matthew Perry, when they announced his death, I knew that I knew it. Anyone in the substance abuse community, we all knew. So, and so, I don't know. I feel that maybe he was taken advantage of. I feel that often people in the substance abuse community are in a way taken advantage of. So, um, we're not completely against, medication assisted therapy, but it's not what we want to do. Our doctor does not want people leaving treatment still hooked on something, because that's not his goal at all. But it does have its place in detox, like a short-term taper, 5 days. You know, that actually,
Because I think we're a very, I mean, our whole medical system seems to, oh, you have that symptom, here's a pill. But as we just spoke, why don't we get to the root cause of whatever illness, when versus taking a pill to mask it. And I would feel like I think it would feel more powerful to have control unassisted, uh, and know that you've got this. It's yours. You own it.
yep. So that was me. I had to actually go completely abstinent. So when I did get my legal consequences, I had no options for Suboxone anymore. It was not allowed at that time. This was back in 2016. The courts would not allow it. They're allowing it now because so many people are dying. But no, I had to come off of it. And I remember thinking, how the heck am I going to make it every day with nothing? Nothing, no mood, mind altering substance. I had never done that since I was 12 years old. And man, I did it, and it was empowering. It was amazing. I mean, I experienced life with like nothing, and I was not looking forward to it. I wasn't happy at first. I thought it was impossible, but the more I did it, the more I thought, wow, this is kind of cool, actually. I mean, I'm feeling everything, even the bad stuff, but I'm feeling the good stuff. It's life. Life is up and down, and I didn't know that until I was forced to, try life without it, a substance. So, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, because that is what addiction is. It's about trying to run away from the ups and downs, trying to flatline everything. And the problem with that is that, yeah, you don't have the downs, but you don't get the ups either, really, do you?
No, no, there were brief bursts of laughter here and there, but no, it was primarily just down, 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 and then flatline. Just your soul is dead. You've lied so much and done so many things that are against your very nature that you just don't feel even human anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And not everybody that comes to you for help is only an addict. There's other things that could be co-occurring right at the same time. Talk to that a little bit. That's very complicated to me.
Yeah. Well, there's, anxiety and depression are two of the most common, I think, motivators of substance use because people try to mask, what they're feeling. And so we see that a lot. I would honestly say there are really some people who don't have any trauma, and they'll tell you that they'll say, well, I had a great upbringing, nothing really happened. I wasn't in the military, I'm just very depressed and I've struggled with depression my whole life. Some have attempted suicide. Um, and often they're aware that what they're doing is actually making that depression worse. But at the same time, they'll tell me it worked when I first started, you know, and then it just started getting worse and worse, and I don't know what happened. Um, so yeah, I would say honestly, large portion of people have a co-occurring, such as anxiety and depression. Those are so common. Um, Now, as far as other co-occurring, um, we don't see as much actually, just because we're a primary substance abuse facility, but we treat co-occurring, such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, stuff like that.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Really common. Yeah.
So
Almost goes.
so tell me what it feels like. You have this unique perspective where you're not only in your power for yourself, but you're also sharing that with people who really do need it to get through that first step of recovery. Tell me what life feels like now. What's the color? What's the vibrance? What is it about now for you?
Well, I'll tell you, this job emotionally is very, very exhausting. But when I talk about the gifts of this job that you just can't get anywhere else, such as watching someone's entire life change, their whole demeanor, their tone and color. I had someone recently. I get a lot of compliments, and it's hard, honestly. Um, but at the same time, it's like I remember, and I might have talked about this in our last podcast, but I remember feeling like a complete failure when I was at the height of my using. Like I had failed my kids, I failed my husband, I had failed life, and thinking, why is there so much suffering in the world? Why do people have to suffer? Um, and thinking, I just want to be useful. I want to be useful in the grander scheme of things, not something that's meaningful that you might not even talk about or ever be written. But I made a ripple, and that is what I'm doing. I know it, I feel it. And people tell me all the time. And so that's not I don't feel that in an ego way. It's a gift from the universe. Whoever answers prayers answered that prayer for me, and I'm allowed to give that back now. So that does feel amazing. But I don't ever feel like I don't know, I don't ever feel like I'm worthy of it. So I'm still working on that. So I don't take compliments well. I kind of like somebody will give me a compliment and I'll just like skip over it like it didn't even happen, and like, so what are you doing today? Let's look at you. Let's focus on you, not me. So but I am getting better at it. So yeah, it's nice. It's nice. At least all the stuff I've been through, I can share it with people. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and your kids, you must feel so different in that realm to finally be able to be there 100% for them.
Yeah, my daughter, she's my buddy. She's like my biggest cheerleader. And they saw me at my worst, and then they saw me just at my best, coming up. And so it is nice. And it is, and there are times when I'll think, man, I wish I could have been this person for them when they were younger. And, but I don't dwell on that because I wasn't, and that's okay. They know,
Well,
they know.
that is the secret, isn't it? To not dwell, to let those things come in, have their moment, and go out. And it's kind of like I'm a meditator, and it's kind of hard to explain to people how I could never sit still like that. I could never meditate, which of course is not true. What you have to be willing to do is
Mhm.
to let the things that are coming at you just go by and not impact you. I love it for that reason. That on the days that I've meditated, I can notice a difference. If someone cuts me off when I haven't meditated, I think it's about me. When it's on a day when I have meditated, I know it has nothing to do with
Isn't
me.
that amazing?
Yeah, you must have that all the time.
Yeah,
Yep. You shared one success story about the young man. Is there any other story like that you wanted to share with me?
yeah. There's one that I share often actually. This person called in right before the phones closed. It was like right before 10 o'clock. And they had seen our commercial and it was Barnett on there. He's just so I don't know what it is about him. He's welcoming. There's I feel that he is genuine and peaceful and trustworthy. So she had seen that commercial and she called and I picked up the phone and immediately she said, she's crying, I mean sobbing. She said, I I want to die. I want to die. I'm a failure as a mother and a husband and a wife, and I'm better off dead. I want to die. And I was overwhelmed in that moment because and I'm not doing that call justice. She was very, very broken and just so much coming out of her. And I thought, oh my God, what am I gonna do? She wants to die. Like she like I wanted to die at the end too. I wanted to die. So I can absolutely relate. I thought, okay, I'm never gonna overcome this. So I felt that and I knew that's where she was at. But I thought she's so far away. What if I don't have her address? I talked to her for oh, it was an hour and a half and she cried and she just I got her in. She decided she was there alone. Her son was at work. She gave me her son's number. I called him. I said, listen, we need to get your mom in here. And he said, I agree. We haven't known how to do it. And he brought her the next morning. Her husband was out working. He works long haul. But when they pulled up, she was terrified. This is a part of alcohol that I don't think people always realize. But after a while of daily drinking, when you're just really going and you're not stopping, people stop sleeping, they stop eating. There can be sometimes a psychosis. It's not like true permanent psychosis, but the symptoms are very, very much the same. I mean, just imagine, when you're not sleeping or you go to sleep for an hour and you wake up in withdrawal. That's what was happening with this one, and she just couldn't stop. And she hated herself because she couldn't stop. And she had grandkids and she wasn't seeing them. And I met them in the parking lot and she was terrified. I mean, like a small child, to even walk in. She could barely walk. She hair was all ratty. Um, she hadn't had a shower and we got her a wheelchair and I held her hand and her son held her other hand and we got her in. And I remember thinking, and I knew it, I can feel energy. And I thought, okay, everybody here thinks she's never gonna make it. That's fine. I get it. But that's my favorite. The one that nobody thinks is gonna make it. Believe me, I'm gonna do everything I can to get them through that. And she did. She did, and she was not your average client. She is an example of how we sometimes we tailor our program and our approach to fit somebody where they're at. She's a very good example of that. And that's what we did with her. And I don't know, it was about 3 weeks ago. She graduated. She was so grateful. She made it and she texted me pictures of her garden recently. And she told me, I'm alive because of you. And I was like, no, you're alive because of you.
Yeah,
Because
how
you,
wonderful. How wonderful.
yeah,
Now, there's somebody listening to this who or watching us or wherever they're out there, and they haven't had the courage to make that call. And that's the big step. That call is the first really big step. what do you want to tell them? What advice do you want to give them? The people that you would love to be able to help and impact, but just don't, they're not sure, they're afraid, they don't know this is right for them. What do you want to make sure they know?
Well, what I would say is, um, making a call isn't a commitment. It's just a call. And so pick up the phone, call. I talk to everybody, and that's what I tell people. Just let's just talk. Why don't we just talk like two people, and share things with each other and see where we go. Um, it's not a commitment. You don't have to commit to anything. There's no obligations. Just pick up the phone. And often, just that initial conversation, if it's with the right kind of person, that conversation is cathartic. I mean, it brings out a lot. Um, and often will help bring about the conclusion or the decision on what to do, on what's right, what needs to happen. And so, yeah, if somebody is at their lowest and literally just feeling like I cannot live this way anymore, I can't keep doing this. Yeah, pick up the phone, and often that's all I hear. It's the first thing I hear. I just can't keep going on like this. And that's good news. That's good news because there's a solution. So, and I'm
Wonderful.
happy to, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So before we're done, and we're almost done, I just realized we both wore olive green here unintentionally. That was interesting. But before we go, I would want to give you the opportunity to just, if there was something we didn't talk about or something you wanted to make sure, you know, I always want to make sure you get to say what was important to you. So was there something that you wished you had been able to cover, or just want to make sure that you say before we're done?
Um, no, not particularly. Nothing comes to mind. I think
No?
I've done much better than I did the first time, so I'm happy with that. I didn't blank out on your questions like I did last time. So, right. Um,
What do you, let's tie it up then with a conclusion. What do you want to give people as a message as we depart from this?
okay. Here's one thing that I learned from my boss, that I didn't fully understand when he first told me, but he said that people think treatment is a commodity like corn. Like corn is corn, right? But treatment isn't treatment. And if you're going to treatment, like what's out there right now is almost like a cycle, a puppy mill kind of deal, where it's just they cycle them in, cycle them out. I've got endless calls of people who have experienced this, and that to me, it's another way that substance users are taken advantage of. Really, it just because they're not really getting help. There's not enough time and there's not enough money invested to help them, and so treatment is not just treatment. There are centers out there that are unique and whose goal it truly is to help and get to the bottom of what's driving the substance use, because we don't start out as people who can't get enough um, of a good feeling. We don't begin our life like that. Um, Somehow we get to that point, and so there's something there, and the goal is to get to the bottom of it and address it, and so it doesn't keep coming back like the weed. So ask questions. If anyone's looking for treatment, ask questions. Ask how many individual therapy hours they get. All of that, those are good questions. But ask the tour of the facility, you know, stuff like that, because they often on the phone will sometimes take advantage of people who are really desperate in that moment, and it's wrong, and that's something that I pride myself on. I will never do. So yeah,
All
that's
right.
about
Well,
it.
that
Yeah,
was wonderful, Heather. Thanks so much. Thanks
yeah.
again. And it was terrific.